Greetings everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm your host Captain Ryan. Today's YouTube video is a subscriber replay that comes from Derp Amber. Derp is in the Konig and it's a tier 5 maximum battle on the Solomon Islands map in Domination Match Mode. The battle's already been going on for a few minutes, but the first few minutes, because it's a tier 5 battle and because he's in a Konig, kind of boring as he just slowly sails towards the A cap point. But the battle up to this point, pretty much teams just moving into positions. Now, there are enemy aircraft carriers on each team, and what's impressive is, particularly about this battle, is that Derp here in the Konig manages to shoot down a ridiculous number of these airplanes. Normally, something that you would see maybe a player in a Texas do. Not necessarily in a Konig. Derp is heading towards the A cap point, but it looks like the destroyer that's up there is going to successfully capture that location before he manages to get there, which is of course a little disappointing because that means no delicious capping XP for him. However, there are a number of ships that are just around the headland of this island for him to shoot at, including some broadside on battleships. Granted, they are German battleships, which means they're going to be a little more difficult to penetrate, but they're still broadside on. You can still do a pretty good amount of damage, and Derp does just that onto the side of that enemy Konig. He's going to continue around the side of the island here, and he's got lots of target options to shoot at. He's not alone, which is also very important. Definitely one of the things that a lot of players in battleships tend to forget is they tend to forget to not sail off alone. Otherwise, they end up in nasty, messy situations with a lot of people shooting at them and really no way to get away from it since they're not that fast. His team manages to capture the C cap point, while the enemy team has captured the B cap point. His team is down 2 ships to the enemy's 1. And he's going to continue picking on this enemy Konig, partly because he's the closest target, and also partly because he's broadside on. But that's not to say that if another target becomes a bigger threat, he's not going to switch over. And he is carefully looking at other targets that are closing in on him. There is an enemy destroyer that's popped up, and enemy destroyers at this kind of range, even in lower tiers, are very, very dangerous targets indeed. Now he's risking turning broadside onto this enemy battleship, but that's partly because the enemy battleship's already fired a good number of shots, but that's also to avoid any incoming torpedoes that might have been fired by that destroyer. He wants to turn away rather than closing in because he doesn't want to be caught in between with a crossfire going around him, which is a very good move. Now the question is he going to get the kill on this enemy battleship? Come on, yes he does manage to do it. And there are those torpedoes that I was talking about from that enemy destroyer. Other enemy battleship off in the distance, another Konig possibly, is also broadside on, and he gets his shots out here. Doesn't do a lot of damage. His shots either break apart or ricochet in the first set there, but that's okay. He does manage to do a couple of reasonable hits. Another enemy destroyer pops up, but he is being detected, and he is taking a lot of fire from a lot of people. Doesn't stop Derp here from putting shots out, which is kind of impressive that he actually does manage to hit him at this kind of range. Not enough to kill him, though, but does do some damage. And with destroyers at any kind of range, any amount of damage that you can do is a good thing. Looking at the situation, the enemy team is now down 3 more ships, and they're actually equal on ships with the enemy team. In fact, both teams seem to have lost a respectable number of ships, though Derp's team no longer has the destroyer advantage because they have lost one of their destroyers. That enemy destroyer, though, looks like he's trying to make a beeline for friendly aircraft carrier, and it would definitely be bad if he managed to make it to that carrier. But he doesn't do it as Derp manages to snipe him from range with a battleship and takes out that enemy destroyer. That's going to give his team a destroyer advantage, but kind of. As you can see there, friendly destroyer up there in a smoke screen with no health left. That guy doesn't have a lot of options here. Enemy battleship that's pretty much broadside on up here is reversing. So he's not going as fast as he could, and he's also got himself into a position where he's got at least 2 different ships shooting at him. Enemy team has managed to keep the number of ships relatively equal in this battle, and they've begun to cap the sea cap point. So points-wise, both teams are actually pretty close with their number of points. And this match is kind of really turning into a very close battle. Enemy team suddenly stops capping the sea cap point. Not sure what's happening up there, but keep in mind the enemy team still does have their aircraft carriers, and there is one of them. Now Derp has opted to continue focusing fire on that battleship that's reversing, partly because removing guns from the game is very important, especially when they manage to kill other friendly ships. So that battleship out of it, but his team has again lost more ships. The team's lists are still very, very equal, though the destroyer, who has got no HP, is somehow still alive. Now, remember, we did see that enemy carrier pop up there briefly. Pay attention to that carrier. He's going to be very important here, as Derp is kind of the only target down here, and somewhat a bit of a threat. That carrier knows that if he gets spotted by planes or whatnot, Derp's guns can rip him a new one. So he's going to start sending aircraft over constantly. But Derp has another problem that he's got to worry about right now. He has an enemy ship that's spotting him. He's directly detected, but he can't see what it is. And that's probably indicative of one of the enemy destroyers, which we know was over here, is detecting him. So there's a possibility of torpedoes. Speaking of torpedoes, here come the torpedo bombers from one of the carriers. This is going to be from the Hosho, I believe. And he does get a couple... No, he gets one hit, but Derp manages to, well, start shooting down those planes. Speaking of the ship that I was concerned about, there he is. He's popped up. It's a Tsuki who's wandered just a little too close, and Derp punishes him for it. Those 15-inch guns just amassing regular penetration damage. And there are the torpedoes that I suspected might be on the way. Fortunately for Derp, they're fairly slow, and the Mitsuki didn't give any kind of lead on that. Or didn't, I should say, didn't give any kind of spread on that to prevent Derp from just going around them. One of the enemy aircraft carriers is still back over in this vicinity, but the other enemy aircraft carrier is working his way towards the C cap point. Friendly aircraft carrier that you can see has worked his way down to the A cap point, and one of them is almost, if not already, completely out of planes, and this is a bit of an issue. Enemy Mitsuki does pop up yet again. Derp puts more rounds into him, but doesn't quite kill him, and that's very frustrating. RNGesus, why do you do this? Why do you leave people on such low, disturbingly low health, especially destroyers who become sneaky? Of course, Destroyer manages to beach himself and has to back up into detectability range, which is going to give Derp the opportunity to finish him off. More planes incoming, And there are more torpedoes from the Mitsuki. Fortunately, because of Derp's little maneuver turning in towards him, those torpedoes, again, completely miss. But this time the destroyer did spread them out a little bit, though he should have gone on the lead indicator and shorted to ensure a better chance of hitting. Surprisingly enough, at this late stage in the game, Derp has managed to not take all that much damage. And even the dive bombers from the enemy carriers are missing him as well. And he's starting to rack up those aircraft kills, as the enemy CVs really don't have much to shoot at. At this point, there are only three ships left on his team, and only two that can actually do anything at the moment, because one of them, again, is a carrier with no planes. However, the enemy team is also not only in a ship's lead, they also have a cap advantage, which means they're starting to gain points back, and this could be a serious problem. Derp has really got to get himself into the B cap point and regain it, but he's got the issue of having to deal with these aircraft. There is one of the 4 remaining enemy ships. He puts shots off, and there's one of the aircraft carriers has popped up, and it's the Bogue. Now, that's the Tier 5 carrier. He's got dive bombers and fighters, and if he can take the Bogue out of the game, it would be a really good thing for his team, because it would at the very least equal out the number of carrier-borne aircraft squadrons that both teams have. Of course, I feel like he stays on this course just a little too long. He really, really does need to turn away and head back into the B cap point, and preferably not pull a monster and beach himself. Still, he's getting shots off at this Bogue, and he's doing reasonable amounts of damage, but he's not managing to hit a Citadel. It's always satisfying to Citadel and one-shot a carrier, but just doing the damage is good enough. And of course, that carrier, because it's a Bogue, has the problem that he's slow, which means he's not going to be able to escape behind this island any quicker than Derp is going to escape behind the island and avoid all of these wonderful bombers. Finally does have a bomber connect and light him on fire. Of course, he doesn't have his repair ability at the moment, and he doesn't have damage control up either. So that fire is going to burn for just a little bit. He does start capping the B cap point, and he's still being detected, and that's probably one of the aircraft carriers, more than likely the Bogue back over by the C cap point. He gets set on fire a second time, so now he's got 2 fires burning, and this could be a bit of a problem. So he pops his damage repair ability, and he starts taking shots in from this Wyoming. Now, this Wyoming is firing high explosive, so I'm not entirely sure if this Wyoming knows what he's doing or not. On one hand, firing high explosive at a German battleship, definitely viable, set the bastard on fire. On the other hand, he's giving you a reasonable broadside, and you could do pretty good damage with just armor piercing. He does manage to hit that Wyoming with his armor piercing. Of course, the Wyoming was giving broadside, so there's no surprise there. More dive bombers managed to hit him again, set him on fire, so again he's got another fire that's going to burn for quite a while as his damage repair is again on cooldown. But for the moment, it looks like he might be relatively safe from incoming fire from those other 2 ships. And there is the enemy Phoenix, who's popped up here, and he is getting really, really way too close for comfort. Of course, the Phoenix has torpedoes. As Derp manages to slam on his brake, the Phoenix misses those shots. He's really trying to avoid getting reset from the cap, but nope, Phoenix manages to connect on those shots and do it. And of course, Wyoming pops up here. He's set on fire yet again. In this particular case, because the Phoenix has torpedoes, again, prioritizing the torpedo boat first. Get rid of those torpedoes or face problems. Unfortunately, he manages to pull a nonster and beach himself, but the torpedoes from the Phoenix miss him completely, at least on one side. So he's going to get himself backed up, and he's on fire yet again. Wyoming still firing the high explosive. that Wyoming really does need to switch to armor piercing because he's got the broadside of a battleship to shoot at. Come on, manages to finish off the Phoenix with a Citadel, earning himself a Kraken Unleashed. Now this Wyoming's got more HP than him, and Derp has no heals left. If this Wyoming was firing armor piercing, Derp would be dead, and this battle would be over. Unfortunately, the Wyoming never did switch to that armor piercing, and gets finished off. This just leaves Derp with his minimal HP, with enemy aircraft still coming back. If he gets set on fire by this dive bomber, he's done for. That's it. Game over. Come on. He manages to shoot down the airplane before he drops his bomb. So now he's got himself in a prime position. At this point, the enemy aircraft carriers don't have any planes left. Well, almost no planes left. Here come more dive bombers in. This is going to be from the Hosho. Can he shoot those down before they get to him? Come on. He does manage to cap the B-cap point. Friendly carrier is pushing up. Aircraft drops its bombs. Manages to miss him again. Very lucky. Thank you, RNGesus, for that. Praise be to he, our almighty RNGesus. The bogey that he was picking on earlier is in visual sight. Unfortunately, Wargaming hitboxes on the island block all of those shots, so he's got to spend time backing up to clear the island ridge, just enough for his shots to get over. The question is, can he do it? His team is finally back with 2 caps now, which is going to be good for him. Shots out there, manages to land a couple of shots, earning himself a high caliber to go with his Kraken and Confederate. And he's definitely earned that high caliber. Just look at the amount of damages he's done. Friendly carrier all the way up at the C cap point. Looks like he's trying to go for a ram on the enemy Hosho. Derp manages to finish off the Bogue, and that leaves just 1 enemy carrier left, who's got full strength. Of course, friendly carrier, they're just gonna duel it out, and at this point, there's not much that Derp can really do, because he's not in a good position. Some of his shots are being blocked by the island, but of course, his shots hit that carrier just in time for the clock to run out. Still, though, he manages to do 131,000 damage. Come from behind, win just a little bit there at the end. This was really a seesaw matchup. He's earned himself a devastating strike. No, he's earned himself fireproof Dreadnought, Kraken, high caliber, and Confederate. And of course, with a battle like that and 7 kills, you would expect him to be top of the team for XP earned at well over 2,000 base XP. Very good for Derp. Good battle, loved it. Loved to see the seesaw action where it did look like your team was going to lose, and if those bombers had managed to connect on your ship there at the very end, it would have been game over. Anyway, that's it for today's video, folks. If you liked the video, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment down below. If you'd like to get semi-regular channel news and updates, you can do so by liking and following me on Facebook. If you'd like to help support me and my channel and the growth of my channel, you can do so by becoming a supporter on Patreon. If you've got a replay like this one that you'd like to see on my channel, with my wonderful commentary, you can do so by sending it to my email. And if you'd like to watch me play World of Warships, Armored Warfare, among other games, live on Sundays about 10 a.m., you can do so by liking and following me on Twitch. You can find the links for all of those in the video description down below. And as always, I'll see you next time. This is Captain Rye, signing off.